Oh, welcome to the Gambling Gauchos. I'm Rob Bro. He's Kyle Jacobson. He is Money Mainville. It's football night in America. We're talking football tonight on the YouTubes, the Facebook, the Twitter, all under the Gambling Gauchos name. You can join us on the Republic of Football feed as it's posted on Monday morning. But if you're watching live, tuned in live, let's all commiserate together. On the Barnett, Howard, and Williams rundown tonight, it's just really one thing. Washington State beat your family show behind. Not good. We'll talk about it. We'll discuss it. And I think for that assault and battery that Wazoo put on the Red Raiders this weekend, Joey and Kirby Hoka might be able to call Barnett, Howard, and Williams and file a complaint. But to me, it was all within the letter of the law. There's not much of a case. But if there was one, they could call Barnett, Howard, and Williams. They are based in Fort Worth. They're the best in Fort Worth. They do work across the state of Texas. Criminal law, family law, whatever you need, they can do. Find them at bhwlawfirm.com. All right, the rest of the Big 12 was incredible on Saturday. It really was. Starting at 11 a.m., you had Arkansas and Oklahoma State. Great game. In the next window, you had a couple of good games. You had the Allen Bowen pew, 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 finger guns down the sidelines. When they went to overtime, I thought, this is horns down all over again. He screwed them. But it was not. They survived. They covered. We'll talk about our picks later on in the show as well. We all tied, technically, except I lost. So we didn't tie. But we did tie. We all picked the same amount of games right, but money's main line, money lines, did not do me well. It did the other two guys well. So we'll talk about those as well.
People's eyes are opening to how this whole thing goes. We all tied, and yet,
Yeah, except I lost. Why would I cheat my way to a loss?
So then you didn't tie. You didn't tie then.
No, we all picked the same amount of games correctly.
That's not how a tie works.
Technically.
You lost the Electoral College, and you're over here talking about the popular vote, and it's all just Rob.
Hey, we hung Chads last week, and now we're moving on.
See, people's eyes are opening to what happened last week.
You know what? We're gonna rotate who has to deal with the picks every week, so I don't have to.
Last week you lost, but we tied. This week we all tied, but you lost. See how this is going?
No. That's not what happened. There was a slight miscalculation, and we corrected it. And I just want the truth. Is all I want. I think in our democracy here with the college football picks, we all want the truth. We all want justice, and that's what we did. We found the truth and the justice of the picks last week.
Big justice.
Big justice. It was a doom this weekend for me, picking the Mississippi State money line. In the late window, there was a pretty good game in that Arizona State-Mississippi State window. I would love to talk about how Arizona laid an absolute egg against Northern Arizona. I would love to talk about how Cincinnati blew it against Pitt. We're just not going to. This is a Texas Tech podcast, first and foremost. We dabble in the Big 12, but tonight we need to discuss Washington State and Texas Tech. Kyle, you had some great body blows after the game on patreon.com/gamblinggauchos. If you're not signed up, you're missing a lot of great content from these two gentlemen and the best Discord server in the world of Texas Tech athletics and otherwise. Join us on Patreon, patreon.com/gamblinggauchos. Some poor soul has been a Patreon member for 4 or 5 months or longer and joined the Discord last night in the middle of that game. And I don't know if he enjoyed himself, but the Picadors certainly were last night. Can I get some opening thoughts from you, Kyle, on that game and just the borderline debacle it was for the Red Raiders?
I think it could be fairly described as a complete disaster, quite literally from start to finish. You fumble away the opening kick return, and it pretty much didn't get better from there. And you repeatedly gave Washington State great field position in the most creative
Fashion. Money. Do you want to finish his thought?
So I think he's setting up. Wazoo got great field position every time they got the ball on offense. You consistently shot yourself in the foot with turnovers, with questionable at best decisions on fourth down. But I think really what stood out to me is we sat here for or last week and talked about control of the game, right? We mentioned that would be such a big thing in this game, and I had kind of a different reason as to why I thought that would be so critical, because I thought this game was going to be a complete shootout. The undercashed, it wasn't a crazy low scoring game, but Wazoo did win the game a lot differently than I thought they would win the game. But I mean, you did yourself no favors consistently. Again, just bad decisions and then just lack of game control. Obviously, a lot of that comes down to not having Taj Brooks, but it felt like the second you fumbled that opening kickoff, it was full on panic from there on. And you got in your own way with that anxiety and that urgency rather than just slowing it down, trying to take it one series at a time. It just felt like the minute you made that mistake, and it didn't feel good watching it. I'm guessing it didn't feel good from the sidelines. But to play the game you played against Abilene Christian, come out, immediately fumble the opening kickoff, it felt like you were trying to rectify that sin the rest of the game, and it just dug your grave a lot deeper.
Wazoo started drives on the Texas Tech 37, 40, 49, 43, 2, and 38. They also started a drive on their own 49. Both of the drives on the either side of the 50 and the drive starting on Texas Tech's 43 started after failing to convert on a fourth down. They scored 17 points on those three drives. Kyle, you were talking about a spectacular fashion. I think you cut out during the word fashion.
Yeah, I don't remember where I was with that thought, but I don't know if I've ever seen a game like that, in the sense that and I'm actually not going to be careful with my words in terms of like not trying to take away something from Washington State, but you quite literally did not make them earn it on a single offensive drive, at least while the game was still somewhat in the balance. I mean, every single scoring drive that you can look at from Wazoo, it begins with Texas Tech making some form of catastrophic mistake, whether that's on special teams or offense or game management, coaching decisions. And that was the most frustrating part to me, was it's entirely avoidable. And the entire time I'm thinking it doesn't have to be this way, but we chose to make it this way, either by going for it on fourth down somewhat recklessly, or with poor execution or bad penalties, or you name it. But you could line up 10 times against that team, and with a well-coached game that's managed efficiently and properly, there's absolutely no reason why you should be out of it halfway through the third quarter and lose by 20 points. So that was the irritating part to me, is Texas Tech has lost many games over the last 15 years because they just weren't as good of a team as their opponent, and almost no matter what they did, you're just outmanned, outgunned. That was not the case, and the Taj injury was huge. Um, we seemingly did panic about that, as if, like, yes, Taj is obviously better than your other running backs, but we kind of acted like nobody else was capable of taking a handoff. Which, to me, if you have a next man up philosophy and you're the toughest team in the country and all that good stuff, then you should behave like it and try to run the ball a little bit, sometimes maybe. And like Money said, you just kept digging yourself in a deeper and deeper hole, going back to the same things that weren't working and the same things that were setting Wazoo up for success over and over. and it just got completely out of hand. And it, like I said, it felt 95% avoidable and your own doing that you were up the creek like that.
You ended with 150 yards rushing, and I'm not real sure how. Cameron Brown had a 22-yard run late in the game. Cameron Valdez had a 17-yard run on a kind of a GT play. Cam Dickey had a 12-yard run. But that's 5 carries, 8 carries, 7 carries. Nobody had more than 10. Jalen Conyers had 3. I want to go to the 1 4th down. I'm just going to be jumping all over this game because there's so many spots. I do have a couple of questions for you guys after this, but I do want to mention the 1 4th down with Jalen Conyers. I did not do a rewatch. I could not bring myself to it. I was watching my Dallas Cowboys dominate the Brownies. When Jalen Conyers was in the Wildcat and ran on 4th down to the right, do you have that play in your mind, you guys? Was Cam Dickey expecting him to throw a jump pass? Because he olayed 2 blocks and turned around like he was going to catch a pass.
I don't think it was the play call if it was what he was expecting, because Joey had a comment about it post game, and
So
I
he
think that
just
was
missed
one
2
of the negative things he pointed to was, hey, he did well in the run game, but missed a big block on 4th down.
Woof. Next question. Does Texas Tech have a run game, or do they have Taj Brooks?
No, it's all Taj Brooks, and that's apparent. Go back and watch last year. He had an incredible season. I think maybe we even underestimated how he was able to be that good and that efficient on a per carry basis without seemingly ever having, like, being able to get through the first level untouched and get to the second level with a head of steam and being able to make a guy miss. I mean, he 100% earns nearly every yard he gets. And maybe that's part of why they went away from it, knowing that, okay, we don't have all world guys behind him, and this isn't going to go well for us. Throwing the ball didn't go well for us either. But yeah, no, you're not really good at anything on offense without Taj Brooks, and he masks a lot of deficiencies. You have good skill players. You have a quarterback that can't throw it in the same zip code as them, even when you've got a good play call and they're open. When they do get the ball, sometimes they fumble it away. Sometimes Morton is running for his life. So you've got better pieces than you had last year. But no, there's nothing you do on offense that's cohesive or that you have an identity with, other than kind of maxing out Taj's workload when he is available. And you kind of saw that with the sideline pass. It worked sometimes. I didn't total it up how many times we ran it, what the average was. Worked sometimes, it got blown up sometimes. But we clearly panicked and like had nothing else in the chamber that we thought we could do. And it was like, oh shoot, I guess let's hurry up to the line again and run the sideline pass again. And maybe it'll work, maybe not. We'll turn it over eventually, regardless.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have zero offensive identity without Tosh Brooks. You're not good at anything.
They obviously leaned on the sideline passing game in lieu of a run game yesterday. And that was very obvious. Next question. Why did Cameron Valdez come back out of the transfer portal? And why did they take him back? If they don't trust him to run the ball more than 8 times in a game, if they don't trust him with Taj Brooks not playing, why did he return? Unless he wasn't getting any offers elsewhere, and why did they take him back? If they don't trust the guy, I mean, he looks good, right? I don't understand what he's doing on the roster if you're not going to use him.
And I was impressed with Dickey last night too, in terms of just run game and kind of what he was able to generate on a per carry basis. I thought he looked fine. But again, like we're post week 2 now, and your second leading rusher, or your leading rusher not named Taj Brooks, is Cameron Brown. Like, we've seen this story before with Tyler Shuck, and You simply have no run scheme outside of Taj Brooks and nothing that you're consistently willing to go to or utilize. And it's concerning. And I think part of why it's concerning is last week, we touched on this on our Wednesday episode. Joey all off season and even as recently as this past week was saying we're built to pass the ball, right? Like that's where our greatest strength is. That's where we have the personnel. We're a team built that's meant to pass the ball. There was no greater opportunity, sample size, whatever you want to look to, than this week to kind of prove that out. Baron Morton threw just shy of 60 passes, I think. I think he threw for 58. That was a terrible, terrible offensive night for you. And so if you've had this identity that you're going to be a passing team first and foremost, which I still don't really understand with the guy you have in the backfield, I think that kind of proved out last night that maybe it's time to revisit how you scheme around the run game with or without Taj, because it felt like you tried to replace that in the quick passing game and in the screen game, and it was not successful whatsoever.
No, it wasn't. I've only ever called for one coach's firing, and that was Matt Wells after the Kansas State game. And lo and behold, the next Monday, I think Kyle and I both were pretty adamant on that Sunday night, and it happened the following day. I'm not going to call for a coach's job today, but this offense stinks. The scheme, the rhythm, the efficiency, the decisions in short yardage. I don't understand it. I haven't understood it for 3 years. It's the opposite offense of what Joey Maguire promised in his opening press conference. It goes away from every tenet of toughness and hardworking and complimentary football that Joey Maguire subscribes to or claims to subscribe to. It's not a winning offense unless you're putting up 500 yards a game through the air and have Jareth Stearns and Bailey Zappi or Patrick Mahomes and Jakeem Grant. I just do not like this offense at the collegiate level. I never have. The air raid is tiresome to me. It's played out. And again, I don't necessarily want to move on from Zach Kittley, but I hate this offense. And I would love to move on from the offense.
You know how we kind of like collectively as fans clown on commentators that still talk about Texas Tech and the Big 12 like it's 2011 or something. And they're like, oh, yeah, high flying offenses. And, Tech is always going to be explosive. And, we haven't been under Kitley, Yost, really since Cliff. I forgot what we were last year in yards per play and the year before that. Definitely bottom half in the country. Kind of close-ish to being closer to last place than the median. Maybe not quite.
I think we were 80th last year.
Yeah, that's terrible. It's terrible. But we still seem to operate like we have to run this offense like you're not allowed to run anything besides the air raid here. And it sucks. Like, this is not a winning offensive system in 2024. I don't know who runs this. Like you said, Rob, you can run it if you're 2019 LSU or whatever, and you've got Burrow throwing to Thaddeus Moss, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase. Okay, fine. Until we have like a historically efficient Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback throwing to two guys that as soon as they step into the league are two of the best receivers in the league, like this is just not going to work. Look at the teams that have either been successful at the top of the Big 12 or had a total resurgence as a program in the last like 5 to 10 years. Baylor, every time they've won, it's been power run game. Kansas, it's this like spread triple option stuff, running the ball. Kansas State under Colin Klein, I think they were the most efficient on a per play basis or maybe per drive, like points per drive basis in the conference the last 2 years. It's not tempo, it's not airing it out, it's not sideline passes.
Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State. So I don't know why we think it's still 2011 and like this is the offense everybody runs. If you want to be good, you have to run this offense. It's the exact opposite. There's very little precedent for running this offense and winning a lot of football games. And I mean, even at the time when Maguire first hired Cumbie, it was like, okay, Cumbie's not, in my opinion, like a full-blown air raid guy. Maybe he used tempo some. I don't think he used it as much as Kitley does. But like he used tight ends, he ran the ball, he would slow things down, especially with a young quarterback. Like he would call Donovan over to the sideline every single play rather than going tempo right up to the line of scrimmage. I was like, okay, I can see this being complementary football. We can have a balanced offense under Cumbie and complement the defense that Maguire wants to run. And in some ways, even though Zach Kitley was a hot commodity and like was allegedly being pursued by Auburn and Miami when we hired him, it was a head scratcher, and we said as much at the time from a fit standpoint and a stylistic standpoint. Nothing Joey said indicated that he wanted to run up tempo, air it out, run 90 plays per game. And so in that sense, it's no mystery like why this hasn't worked out very well. And it does make me wonder if or when he's going to put his foot down and say, this isn't the offensive identity I want to have. If Kitley can't adapt to it, then we'll need somebody else to come in and establish an offensive identity. I guess in hindsight now, with the benefit of 2.5 years of this, I'm surprised he didn't pass on Kitley from the get-go and say, it's not the kind of offense I want to run. It's not what I envision for our program. You're a great up-and-coming offensive coordinator. Good luck somewhere else that wants to run this, but I don't want to run it. And who knows? I have no clue what's going on inside Joey's mind if he's being honest with himself, like in his deepest, most inner thoughts when he goes home and his head hits the pillow, if he thinks I should have never made that hire, or I wish, or even just make the hire, but put your thumb on the scales a little bit and say we're not going to go tempo. Like there's a balance for every head coach to strike. You want to hire good coordinators and let them do their job, but if there's also a specific identity you want to establish and you want to do it a certain way, then like tell them, we're only going to run tempo in these types of spots. You need to kind of run the ball a certain amount. Obviously, you need to adapt with like game flow and everything and specific circumstances. But I mean, say like we're not going to run this offense where we run 90 plays, throw it 60 times, all this stuff. And like the end of season results have been bad. You've kind of done enough to scrape together like good enough seasons overall as a team. It is a big major point for me that they do have consecutive winning records in conference play, but none of that has been because you have an efficient, consistently good offense. Truly, it seems like you're winning in spite of them more than anything. You're winning games like 28-27 or 27-24 just enough times. But man, when this offense is bad, it is abysmal. And not just from like an efficiency standpoint, but that complementary component where you give Wazoo the ball 7 times or whatever within 50 yards of their own end zone. And I think they got one in garbage time, but at one point, maybe when they had like 4 touchdown drives under their belt, they didn't have more than 2 first downs on any of those 4 drives. And it's because you played a style of football that didn't require them to matriculate the ball down the field, come up with an 8 or 9 or 10 play script for how they're going to get to the end zone. It was just like turnover, big play, and boom, we're down by 20 points. And it sucks to watch.
Yeah, you had the fumble from Josh Kelly on a screen that was nearly a scoop and score down to the 2. They scored on the next couple of plays. You might have even held them to a field goal there. No, they scored a touchdown that one. You had the turnover on downs. I think at the 43, they scored on the very next play on a long run. It was a really cool kind of wrap around the quarterback GT opposite way. The linebacker absolutely fell down because he over pursued too hard. That's the kind of stuff you want to get into. John Mateer was 9 of 19 9 of 19. But he ran for 200 yards and dominated. A couple of long ones there from John Mateer. If the offense ran 20 less plays, let's say the style is similar, but you run 20 less plays, would that allow you to be more efficient on offense, but also allow your defense to catch their breath and adjust a little on the sideline in their position groups to be a better defense? Are you screwing your defense beyond going for it on fourth down 80% of the time in a game? And, well, I guess you failed 80% of the ones you tried. Would you punt twice, 3 times? You shanked the first punt. That was basically another turnover. But if you ran 20 less plays, would it allow you to be more efficient? I mean, is it as easy as that you could make that one adjustment? I don't know. But I would like to see if that works. I would like to run 70 plays instead of 90 and just see what happens.
I mean, yeah. Again, if you're 2019 LSU, you want to run as many plays as you can. Like, Joe Brady was never running out of good play calls that they could execute in that offense. When you're 2024 Texas Tech and your starting running back is out, there aren't 90 good play calls in 60 minutes. There's just not. I mean, I would be trying to get much closer to 45 than 90. And pick your spots as best as you possibly can, bleed some clock, play for field position, settle for a field goal. And we, for some reason, are hell-bent on doing the exact opposite and pretending like we have just like reams and reams of plays that we think would be excellent, that would be absolute hits that we can execute at a high level. And so let's go tempo, let's run as many plays as we can. And it's just not who we are. The philosophy that we're employing right now is just banging your head against the wall.
Yeah.
I wonder what the score would have been every time you, like, turnovers are what they are. Like, you can't go back in time and say, hey, Josh Kelly, don't fumble this one.
Right.
But, like, you consciously choose not to punt. Had we chosen to punt on every fourth down that we went for, I wonder what the score of the game is. I'm not saying you would have won.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have been as out of hand as it was. And maybe you have a shot in the fourth quarter because it's still a 10-point game instead of a 20-point game. It's just hard for me to buy that a quarterback who went 9 for 19, and yes, they had success running the ball, they had big plays, but at some point 9 of 19 is going to catch up to you, and you are not going to be able to sustain drives if you're doing that. But again, we never force them to sustain a single drive.
Yeah, and maybe if they're, back in their own red zone, if they're back inside their own 20, they're trying to throw it a little bit to get the rest of the field instead of running from the 43 and scoring in one play. I don't know. Maybe they're running it anyways, and they just have 500 yards rushing instead of 300 because they have longer fields to go.
Maybe, but I would like to make them do it.
Yes, 100%. And I think that's my number one thing. My number two thing, and Kyle, you tweeted this, and Joey Maguire said at halftime, I believe, on the radio broadcast that maybe he shouldn't go for it. I think he was being a little sarcastic at that point. But then after the game, he doubles down and say he's going to reassess. I want Joey Maguire to coach the game. And I've said this before, and we've had a few spats about it, Kyle. In the past, you've told me to trust the numbers. It's the numbers across the full season. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I feel like this is what you said to me. It's numbers across the full season. It's if you're bad in one game, the numbers say you'll be better in the next few games, and it all works out across the full season. But you cannot give up games like that on the road. And I go back to the NC State game, and I say, if you punt a few more times in that one, do you win it? Do you not throw a pick six on fourth down with Donovan Smith early in that one to put yourself way behind the numbers. I go back to the Kansas State game on the road and say, if you don't go down by 2 or 3 possessions because you went for it on a really short field, do you have a better opportunity in the fourth quarter to win that game on the road? And now, again, in Pullman, Washington, when Joey Maguire is 3-9 on the road, you just aren't giving yourself good opportunities to win complimentary football on the road. You cannot give home teams extra chances over and over. Now, again, if you're converting these, so maybe you go for the first 2, but after you're 0 for 2 or 1 of 3, maybe you don't go for 4 and 5. But I do believe you said in your tweet this weekend, Kyle, that you might want to see the book go away. I wrote on doublet973.com that I want to burn the book and never see it again. I want Joey Maguire to coach with his brain in his gut like they did for 100 years before they started this analytics stuff and went with spreadsheets instead of thoughtful, mindful, in-game decisions.
Yeah, I think we had this conversation last year, and maybe it was even a mailbag question, and it was like from 0 to 100%, like how much should you lean on analytics? And my answer was like 90-10. Like you can't outsmart the numbers in the long run. Coaches for a long time made egregious calls from an analytics standpoint. Like I don't know how early y'all started watching football, but like as a kid on 4th and 1, you punted like automatically. Like it was crazy to go for it. You only did it in the fourth quarter if you're absolutely desperate.
From like the opponent's 35, if it's 4th and 1, you're punting.
Yeah. And like, but the numbers do say like, hey, your odds of converting 4th and 1 are like 85% or whatever. I'm making that number up. Like it is beneficial for you to keep possession of the ball if you can. Anyway, and we've always, I think, been uncertain. Obviously Joey uses some kind of analytics firm that gives him, I think, a spreadsheet for like every single yard line, down and distance, score, time left, and makes a call that says either go or don't, punt, field goal, pass or run, whatever. And we've always had the curiosity, like, is this data compiled from like, okay, we watched 5,000 college football games and here's what the numbers say, or is it tailored to your specific team? Like, is this saying you should punt it with Austin McNamara, or you should go for it on 4th down, even though your All-American running back is out of the game? I still don't know the answer to that. But at some point, so I'm going to revise my answer from 90-10 to like 70-30. I do think you should use it as a tool. I think you should use it as a reference point. But at some point, like you're saying, Rob, Joey, you make $4 million a year to be the CEO of this program. And if you're standing on that sideline in Pullman and you think at midfield it's a good idea to go for it on 4th and 11, you're just completely wrong. And at that point, if the book says no, trust us, it is a good call to go for it on 4th and 11, then just throw it out. Like it's not a good enough tool for you to be using at that point, and you need to completely reassess where those numbers are coming from. And to our credit, I'll go a little where Kyle was right, where Kyle was wrong. After ACU, when that was working, when you went for it on 4th and 13 and handed it off on 3rd and 13, Money and I both said, like, you're pretty fortunate that worked out because it seemed kind of stupid at the time.
Yep.
And thank goodness in hindsight it did work. But like you do that 100 times, 1,000 times, you're probably not going to convert on 4th and 13. And I don't know. It was easier to defend when it was 4th and 2. And we could argue about like the play call and, well, when you need 2 yards, you should be able to push the opposing defensive line and get 2 yards. It's completely different when it's 4th and 11. You obviously have to throw it, and you've got a quarterback whose PFF is like 47 for the game, and again is missing wide open guys even when he's got time and an open receiver. Like at that point, you have to kind of look Kitley in the eye and be like, "It's 4th and 11. We're not good enough to get this. Let's punt it and see if they can go 80 yards," which is not something we've seen them do all night long. And so anyway, if I'm fine with being aggressive on 4th and 1, 4th and 2, especially when Taj is healthy. But yeah, when you're in a game where the other team only scored because you repeatedly gave them amazing field position, you might think twice about it and say, okay, maybe the numbers lean this way. But yeah, let's step in here with a little bit of common sense and gut feel and situational football. And yeah, like maybe if we do this 1,000 times, it'll work out some kind of way according to the numbers. But like here right now, tonight in Pullman, let's just see if their 9 for 19 quarterback can lead them on an 80-yard drive. And unfortunately, we didn't try it that way. It was refreshing to see, and again, I've been one of the defenders of analytics and all that. I thought, like, probably other than me, Joey would be the last one to go away from this. But his open-mindedness to saying like, yeah, we might reassess is actually pretty refreshing to me. Hopefully, that's a sign that he's willing to look at other things that aren't working right now. And I'll have a final point on analytics, but later on. But that kind of sums up my thoughts on it. And yeah, like if you've lost me on the analytics stuff, you've probably lost just about everybody else.
I'm going to give you their drives. You ready? 2 plays, interception. That's the opening drive after the muffed sky kick. 7 plays, 40 yards, touchdown. That's after you shanked the punt. You punted it on the following drive after a 4-play, -6-yard drive. There were some penalties in there. They punted it back 3 plays, 8 yards. You got a field goal. They punted it back 6 plays, 21 yards. Turnover on downs, 10 plays, 35 yards for you. 3 plays, punt, -2 yards for them. You turn it over on downs again, 8 plays, 35 yards. 1 play, touchdown, 43 yards for them. It's 14-3. That's a huge swing. You fumble. 1 play, -7 yards. They run it back to the 2, 1 play, 2 yards, touchdown. They've not had a drive longer than 43 yards yet. 10 plays, 46 yards for them. Missed field goal. This is following a 6-play, 75-yard drive for Texas Tech. You drive again, interception. 5 plays, 11 yards in total. They return it to the 38 right before half and score another touchdown in 3 plays, 38 yards. To open the second half, they turn over on downs on a 67-yard drive. That's the longest of the night for them. You turn it over on downs, they have to go 51 yards in 6 plays for a touchdown. You throw an interception in the red zone. They punt after 5 plays and 19 yards. You score a touchdown, 61-yard drive, get the onside kick, turn it over on downs. They kick a field goal after driving it for 68 yards. That's the longest drive of their night. It was a huge run from John Mateer. They got them down there. Then you punt. They punt. End of game. They did not move the ball consistently all night long. You gave them opportunities. Money, what are your thoughts on the analytics conversation? And what do you think the move is for Joey? I mean, what adjustments are to be made? I can think of 3 really quick ones, and then I'll let you give your thoughts here. Stop the dadgum penalties. You're averaging 10.5 a game. You did not get double-digit penalties in any game last year. I think you had 2 games with 9 and 1 game with 8. Otherwise, it was like 1, 4, 5, 2. You were much more disciplined last year. It's the same staff. I don't understand what's happening. And then the tempo thing I mentioned earlier.
Well,
less
wait,
play.
1 second. A lot of those penalties are on the offensive line, and it's not the same coaching staff.
True. That's very true. And then the third thing would be, punt a little more and just be more judicious in your 4th down decisions. Now, you could have 5 4th down opportunities next game and go for them, and it would make sense to me because of the down and distance. I just feel like you had some really bad ones. Right after they score, you go for it on 4th down, they score, you go for it on 4th down right after a big fumble return. Like, that's the kind of thing where you just punt and say, all right, the defense is tired. Let's try to get it down there and give them an opportunity. But those are my 3 things that I would want to fix immediately. Otherwise, you'll win 0 Big 12 games. What are your thoughts, Money?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point in staying ahead of the sticks, right? Because, 4th and 5 or within that, if you're at midfield or beyond it, you can probably talk me into it. But you've obviously got to stay ahead of the sticks to make that happen. The way you do that is with a good running game and getting yards on first down, which you seemed reluctant to try and find from your backups on Saturday. Obviously, limiting penalties, which is clearly an issue for this group through 2 games. But then I just think better contextualizing the game and, potentially having a little bit more faith in your defense. I know week 1 was really, really bad and they carved you in the run game on Saturday. But I think if you recognize the situation of who you're lined up against and the fact that they were not willing to throw the ball whatsoever, and I think part of that is because you simply game planned around the fact that you weren't going to allow that. So you dropped 8 quite frequently. But then there's, limited pressure on the inside. You're not filling the box. And so I think it's just contextualizing the situation. Like that 4th and 11 was so critical. And it was, I think, 10-27 at that point in the game. I think it was Tech's first drive of the second half. Obviously, you want to score there and you want to bridge the gap a little bit. But I think, again, just try and pin them deep. Again, I know Jack Burgess isn't Austin McNamara, and I think we're already starting to see some of how we took him for granted over the last couple of years, but just make them earn it. And weigh the fact that even if you don't score, it's not necessarily a negative outcome if you can put Wazoo or any other opponent for that matter in a difficult uphill position to drive downfield. But it just feels like you have no control over the game. That's kind of felt the case for the past 2 weeks. Last week against ACU, I think it was your defense that was putting you in a bad spot. You were letting them score way too quickly. This week, I think you refused to run the football at a high clip, and you constantly ran tempo, even when your quarterback was clearly anxious. He was clearly trying to force it. He clearly had happy feet in the pocket. And I just think it created a mountain of obstacles that just made it impossible, and it made the decision to go for it on 4th and 11 at midfield even more baffling to me. But I just think everything needs more context. I think you've got to figure out what you have on each side of the ball. I think that's really how the next couple of weeks are going to be determined. And I know that's a vague, big umbrella question, but I really think that is the biggest issue facing this team. What is their identity? Who is this team going to be? Because everything that we've been told throughout the last couple of months has been proven false very quickly. This is not a team that's going to be a high octane passing team. I mean, that Wazoo defense is not Big 12 caliber defense, high caliber defense. They were clearly good enough, but a lot of your mistakes and mistakes that you put yourself in the position to make. And then what is your defense? Is your defense going to be able to stop the pass or the run? Is QB run going to continue to be the biggest issue that this defense can see under this coaching staff? I mean, that seems to be the silver bullet. And the more that's on tape, the more that's going to show up against you, especially with all the dual threat quarterbacks that you have in the Big 12 right now. I just think you need to figure out your identity and you need a game plan around that, because you just feel lost right now and you're trying to find answers throughout the game. And that's proving to be a very, very bad gamble right now.
Let's talk about Baron Morton a little bit. I was talking to a former quarterback during the game, and we were discussing how it was nearly impossible to get a rhythm when you're throwing to the sideline so much, especially on early downs. And when you're just flipping your feet and chunking it to the sideline, it makes throwing downfield that much harder when you're not throwing that direction. I don't know. I kind of want to say Baron Morton's play in this game was a little inexcusable. I mean, he finished with decent stats if you're just looking at the box score. He was 34 of 58, 323 yards. That's a terrible average, 5.6 per attempt. A touchdown, 2 picks. His QBR 35.4. A lot of empty yards there. If you ask me, is Baron Morton going to have more games like he did against ACU or Washington State? I think I would still lean the ACU game. But not if you're just insistent on throwing to the sideline on first down so often. And I actually didn't mind a lot of the sideline throws. I think you're blocking way better this year. But throw it when Caleb Douglas and Mason Tharp and John Carlos Miller are the front guys, not Dre McCray. I mean, Dre McCray is not a lead blocker. Put Dre McCray as the guy catching the ball. I don't know. I just think the tempo kills so many of your plays because guys are out of position. If you want to run a play, put the right guys in there to make that play successful. I don't know. I thought Baron Morton had a terrible game, but I don't think that's who Baron Morton is. I think Baron Morton's better than what he played this weekend. But, I mean, if that's the Baron Morton you're going to get, if his shoulders hurt again, I don't know. I just don't know. It's borderline unexplainable to me, Baron Morton missing those wide open guys a week after he's hitting most of them.
This is a guy who's been in your program now. This is his 4th year. Clear-cut starter heading into this season. You essentially tell Tyler Shuck to walk because you know what you have in Morton. I'm not saying I disagree with that decision, but clearly a lot of confidence in this guy, a lot of time underneath his belt that he spent at Texas Tech. And last night felt like we were watching a redshirt freshman making their 2nd or 3rd collegiate start. I mean, just skittish and completely overthrowing Josh Kelly for a really bad pick. I saw some numbers. My buddy Justin over at Red Raider Sports tweeted out this morning. Morton was 4 of 16 with 2 interceptions on passes beyond 10 air yards. That's not an air raid offense. That's an offense that's trying to be some sort of cute spread offense only behind the line of scrimmage. And then also 3 of 11 when under pressure, despite being clean on 80% of his dropbacks. And I think the thing that's hard with this too is I don't think he got a lot of favors. Obviously, not having Taj Brooks behind you makes you pretty one-dimensional, apparently, because you're not going to run the ball. But then just the tempo. I mean, it was so clear to me as a casual observer that he was just not comfortable last night. And pretty quickly into the game too, it felt like, okay, we're in this hole. Now we've got to get out of this hole, and we've got to go as fast as possible to make it happen. We've got to try and make all of this up on each and every drive. And if it doesn't happen, then we're going to have to force our hand and go for it on 4th down. And so I think there's that part that makes it more complicated because I don't think he was really put in a position to succeed. But then some of the throws were just blatant misses. Just bad, like inexcusably bad, not on the same page with even Coy Aiken, like his natural best friend off the field, a guy who he seems to have a great connection with in the passing game. Can't get it to him. I thought Caleb Douglas was good, but even then, a lot of it was yak, a lot of it was getting it on a short catch and taking it for a couple dozen yards. But I mean, it's kind of puzzling to think, like, okay, we thought this was the guy. Is he the guy? Maybe. I still think he's a good quarterback. I think he's a good Big 12 quarterback, but I think there's clearly a propensity for him to kind of get away from himself when the game balloons and when he's put in a position to where he has to go and make up for a deficit.
He played poorly. Other than Brady Boyd, who I think got 5 or 6 snaps, he was the lowest graded player on PFF for this offense. He missed throws, 3 that stick out to me. He missed Caleb Douglas on a comeback route that would have been an easy first down. Threw it, 10, 15 yards wide of him. Missed Caleb Douglas on a really deep post route that honestly he could have put that ball in several different places that would have likely been a touchdown if not a huge gain. And the overthrow to Josh Kelly that was an INT. So he played bad, and like those are where you can't blame the play call because we've got open guys. However, Baron Morton, year 4 in college, year 3 in this program. Who is his position coach, and whose job is it to develop him into a player that's capable of making those plays consistently?
Zach Kittley.
So people say you can't blame the coaches. I get it. I think plays like that are not all on one or the other, but like the buck has to stop somewhere. If you've got a bunch of receivers in year 4 that have no idea what they're doing, can't run the right route, can't catch a pass, some of that is probably coaching. It's a little bit harder with a one-man position group like quarterback. But yeah, some of this is definitely on Kidley. And it doesn't match up that in Kidley's first year here, he says Baron Morton has Patrick Mahomes level arm talent. And in year 3 here, Baron Morton can't hit a guy who's wide open. And so again, those bad throws are on Morton in the moment. But zooming out a little bit from a player development standpoint, why hasn't he been better developed, better prepared for those situations? These are tough questions, but when you're making $1 million to develop quarterbacks, I think we deserve an answer to that. And we can start a little bit of a new bit here. Last week, I tasked the Lubbock media with asking a certain question in response to the ACU game instead of, asking 4 questions about Joseph Adedare's knee. So here's one. Instead of asking about Micah Hudson for the millionth time and why he's not out there, Lubbock media should ask Zach Kittley, hey, coach, during the game on Saturday and during your rewatch on film, at what point did you feel like tempo gave you an advantage? And what was that advantage? Now, there's no answer to that, by the way. There's nothing he can say that would make anybody who watched that game go, oh, okay, I didn't see that the first time. But once he explained how advantageous it was for us to run the offense that way, now it makes sense. But what it will force him to do is, stumble through it and make an implicit admission that it's a terrible way to call this offense. I would ask that question every single week after every game. Because theoretically, that answer could be unique to every game. Like, hey, we went tempo again against North Texas. In what way was it advantageous for us? And when was that noticeable or visible on tape?
Yeah, and again, I asked earlier, if you run less plays, can you be more efficient? If you're not going so damn fast, does the offensive line have less pre-snap penalties? Do you have less motion penalties? Do you have less illegal formations? Whatever it is, pre-snap penalty-wise. Or are you not getting these holding penalties because you're not prepared to snap? Or you're not getting these hands to the face? I mean, it's a lot to go as fast as you do. And like I said 5 minutes ago, if you're not going so fast that you can't sub, and I understand not subbing all the time because you want the defense to not be able to sub too, and there is some gamesmanship there. But if you're trying to throw it to the sideline and the play you call puts Dre McCray as the lead blocker and it's 1-on-2, that is not a successful play call.
And you can hurry up to the line and then prairie dog it, see what kind of look they get, and then call a play. That way they still can't sub, or if they try to, you snap in, they get a 12-man penalty, you get a free play. So you can still play the substitution gamesmanship without actually snapping it with 32 seconds left on the clock and having a false start on 4 different guys on the offensive line.
A lot of people have asked tonight, where's the Western Kentucky offense? I believe he signed with the Chiefs. Bailey Zappi. He's on the Chiefs practice squad now. He's played for the Patriots the last 2 seasons. I don't know where Jareth Stearns is, but he's not walking through that door either. I mean, those guys were incredible at Houston Christian and Western Kentucky. They don't play for Texas Tech. You're also not playing those Conference USA defenses.
Yeah,
not that ACU and Washington State have great defenses, but
Western Kentucky's offense, by the way, remained just fine after Kitley left, and whatever production they were churning out in 2021 did not come to Lubbock with Zach Kitley. And I think they promoted from within. I know they had the same head coach. I don't know if they had like a co-OC or somebody, but it stayed there. It did not travel with, unfortunately. I know we're going to do some mailbag questions. Any final thoughts on the game? Like, should we talk Joey for a second, since there's some Joey discourse out there too?
yeah, you want to start or you want me to?
I can start.
All right, start it.
I'll start by saying I like Joey. I'm not out on Joey at this point. I will be out on Joey if he doesn't make some changes at the end of this year. Let's go back to, well, actually, even before he was hired, when Dave Aranda was hired at Baylor. At that point in time, Joey Maguire was the guy who moved up from the high school ranks. He was already state champion at the high school level. Had some different assistant roles under Matt Rule. I think he coached the tight ends. I think he coached the outside linebackers. I can't remember what else. Maybe those are the only two like specific position groups he worked with. And when Matt Rule left for the Carolina Panthers, the players and their parents were lobbying on social media for them to hire Joey Maguire. They go with Aranda instead. He stays for, I guess, 2 more years. And same deal. I guess Tech went after Jeff Traylor. When that didn't work out, there's THSCA guys saying you need to hire Joey Maguire. Jeff Traylor saying, hey, if you don't hire me, hire this guy. And he was compared. There was a quote. I can't remember who said it. It was somebody maybe in like Dallas media who said Joey's this magnanimous personality who, when you get in the room with him, like it rivals how Mac Brown was with people. Like he's that good. He gets that much buy-in from people. And since he got here, it feels like maybe since the first year, he's been trying to like emulate so many other things in people that like he's no longer, I don't want to say he's no longer Joey Maguire, but it's like when he made the move from high school to college, it was like, oh well, Matt Rule's my mentor, so now I've got to emulate everything the exact way Matt Rule does it. And oh, I don't have any, like I'm sure they didn't use analytics on the high school at Cedar Hill, on the sideline at Cedar Hill High School when he's winning state championships. Like he just intuitively knew how to coach. And maybe there's some minor game management differences between high school and college, but really there shouldn't be. Like the same kind of principles apply in terms of how you use your timeouts, um, how you make decisions, how you manage the clock, all that stuff. And he was obviously good enough at that level to be very successful. And so now it's like, oh well, we're all about analytics, and oh, it's not my decision whether we kick a field goal or go for it or run or pass. It's just we look at the book and we do whatever the book tells us. And oh, I can't win on the road. Let me fly to Detroit and ask Dan Campbell how to win on the road, and we'll do it his way. Like I'm guessing here. If he won multiple state titles at Cedar Hill, they probably went on the road and won quite a bit. So I kind of just wish he would get back to saying like, and this goes back to the conversation we had earlier about wanting to hire an offensive coordinator that would complement the defense and then kind of going away from it. It's like, I'm still very confident he's a good, like natural leader, good football coach who knows how to motivate young men and win football games. Because he was that at the high school level. He was that as an assistant at Baylor. Like you look at their, whichever position group or whatever he was tasked with, always had good production. I think one of the other things he was tasked with was certain special teams units. One of them was like field goal block, pump block. And the next year after Joey was coaching up that special teams unit, they led the Big 12 in pump blocks or field goal blocks, whichever one it was. It's like, I know he's a good football coach, but it feels now like we're chasing something else, and it's like it's gimmick after gimmick, motto after motto, slogan after slogan, and it just seems like a mess. And I don't want any of that. I don't want, okay, after the brand and the toughest, hardest working and 60 minutes of us and all that goes away, well, now it's 1-0, and let's ask Dan Campbell how to win on the road. Like, just be yourself. You got to this point because of who you were, Joey Maguire, with your coaching resume, with your personality. Like, we didn't hire Dan Campbell. We didn't hire Matt Rule. We didn't hire you to like implement what you think they would do if they were at Texas Tech. And I don't know. I don't know if he's intending to operate the program that way, but that's what it feels like from an outsider's perspective, just watching us. Is like this has become some weird mix of like over reliance on other coaches, random mantras and slogans, and analytics. And it's not the guy who won state championships at Cedar Hill, killed it at Baylor under two different head coaches, who players and parents were lobbying for to be the head coach of their son when they were playing. And I just want to get back to that. That's who this entire fan base was on board with hiring. What was it? Almost 3 years ago now. That's what resonates with recruits. It's what resonated with the assistant coaches that all seemingly love coaching under him. And I just want to get back to that. And I honestly think that maybe this is a leap, but the fans that are frustrated with, oh, he's a used car salesman, he's a snake oil salesman. I kind of get. I wouldn't ever call him that, and I don't believe that. But when you're constantly trying to sell some slogan that like Matt Rule came up with, or whatever else, like I can get why that comes across as insincere and disingenuous. And I don't think anybody wants that. We just want the guy we hired 3 years ago to be who you are, which was a successful head coach, successful collegiate assistant coach, and a guy who players and assistant coaches would run through a brick wall for to win a football game. And it's shocking to me that we seemingly have like a bad, not like a rotten culture in terms of like players hate each other or whatever, but that like we're not just better at basics when it comes to football. I'll do another where Kyle was right, where Kyle was wrong. But Rob, you asked me, obviously I was a huge Maguire guy when he was hired. You asked me like, hey, if this doesn't work, what will we look back on and point to that like could be a reason that he fails? And I honestly struggled to come up with answers. I was like, I mean, he seems like a perfect fit. I don't know. But one thing I said was he's not an X's and O's head coach like Cliff Kingsbury, Nick Saban. Like he's recruiter, motivator, CEO, and he's going to have to entrust that his coordinators and position coaches do a lot of good X's and O's work. So I said I could see him failing if he hires the wrong coordinators. I think he's hired the best defensive coordinator we've had in the last 15 years and an offensive coordinator who I would not describe nearly in that same realm. So I think I was correct in that assessment. Where I had a blind spot was we had not seen him be the head coach at a collegiate level, and we, for the most part, and I'll clarify this a little bit, for the most part, did not know how he was going to manage a game on the sidelines when it's his call. Do we call timeout here? Do we kick it? Do we go for it? And so I didn't think of that. You could definitely argue that was a disaster in Pullman against Washington State. Other times, maybe it's a little more debatable. Like, I don't think you win the Texas game in 22 if you don't employ the analytics, fourth down aggressive strategy. But he was in charge, allegedly, at Baylor of like a lot of their like pregame routine kind of thing. I know that's different than game management, but that was a blind spot where like, okay, I didn't know we were going to be the most penalized team in the country, that we were going to be going for it on 4th and 11 at midfield with an abysmal offense. So I don't know. I'm not saying he's doomed for failure because of any of this, but I don't know, man. It just feels like we've strayed from the dude we hired in November of 2021, and now it's this. We're chasing an identity, and like we keep thinking it's going to come from, if we can come up with one more cool slogan, 1-0, then we'll get there. And it's not what I want. I think he's a really good natural leader who inspires young men and coaches that he works with. And I just want him to be that. And if there's no slogan, I don't think there was a slogan under Cliff or Leach or whatever, then We don't need one. We just need a good football coach, and I'm so confident he can be that. Do think some changes will have to be made at the end of this season, and some reflection, introspection is certainly warranted on how we manage games. But yeah, after thinking on it a lot, that's kind of where my head is at. That he seems to be like chasing some version of how somebody else would run his program, at least when it comes to certain aspects, like playing on the road or analytics or whatever. And we hired him to do the job, not those other things or people. And I think he can still be good at this job.
I'm going to ask a dumb question, but have either of you guys seen Rocky 3?
I don't think so.
All right, in Rocky 1, he is a hard luck loser meatball just out getting punched. Okay. And he does a charity match with Apollo Creed. This is Rocky I'm talking about. They go the distance. In Rocky 2, he wins the world heavyweight champion away from Apollo Creed. At the end of the second movie, they have a third bout. Apollo wins the first one. Rocky wins the second one. They have a third bout. Film stops when the final punch lands. Then you go to Rocky 3. And he's gone on and won 10 defenses of his World Heavyweight Championship. And in Rocky 3, he's going to announce his retirement. And Clubber Lang, a.k.a. Mr. T, interrupts him and says, "I want a piece of the glory." Rocky accepts. And then he starts training. Okay. The first movie, Rocky's training with chickens and slabs of beef. In the third movie, Rocky is training in slick gyms. The press is there. He's having fun. He's doing slogans. He's jump roping while taking pictures with fans. And he gets away from him. Clever Lang beats his ass. Then he gets back to basics. Rocky goes back and chases those chickens. He goes back to his brother-in-law's meat market and starts beating on slabs of beef. He puts back on the gray sweatsuit from Rocky 1. We have a good old-fashioned montage. And he runs to the top of the steps, which at this point is featuring a statue of himself. Then he beats Clubber Lang. I don't think this season is over. I don't think Joey Maguire is lost, but I think this program under Joey Maguire needs to get back to basics. I need him to start slapping some beef again. I just feel like they lost themselves a little bit in the South End Zone. I think they lost themselves a little bit in the new world of the NIL game and recruiting, in getting in some high-level prospects, transfers. You just need to play tough football. And we've heard the brand, that's Matt Rule's brand. We've heard 60 Minutes of Us. You know what? That's Matt Rule too. It's not Joey Maguire. I want Joey, as Kyle was saying, to be Joey. People are saying I've never watched Rocky 3. That's exactly what happens. I don't know what they're talking about.
I mean, there are like 6 of them.
That's what happens in Rocky 3.
I know the 4th is when he beats the Soviet Ivan Drago. Is that his name?
He dies. Yeah, he avenges Apollo Creed, who fights him earlier in the movie, because he doesn't throw in the towel because Apollo Creed doesn't want him to. I've seen the movie. I just described exactly what happens.
I trust you.
Anyways, I think that Joey needs to get back to the basics. I really do. Now I just got a text that says I want Joey to slap beef, and that's not what I'm in either. But I just want Joey Maguire to be gritty, like he promised he would. I want him to get back to basics, like he said he was going to do, and just coach hard-nosed football. because that's what we expected when he was hired, and that is not what we've seen.
And I don't want to hear about it. I know that the purpose of a movie is to see what's going on, so like you have to watch Rocky's transformation of going back to basics. But if and when we make that pivot, if that's what we're going to call this, back to basics, I do not want the Texas Tech creative team doing a hashtag back to basics campaign for 8 months and showing us videos of them getting back to basics. Like, I know that they have a job to do and they're good at it. The cinematic recaps, the South End Zone content, all that is great. But it's pretty tone deaf right now when there's no substance to it. And so I think everybody is beyond wanting to hear about, wanting to hear a locker room speech, wanting to hear the right things said in a press conference, wanting to see or hear that our players are hitting personal records in the bench press and squat in the off season. Just show up on Saturday and win a football game. Play well. Don't commit more penalties than anybody else in the country. That's like the only thing that can kind of improve your reputation with the fan base at this point. So if and when they get back to basics or come up with another slogan or band slogans or whatever they're going to do, I don't want a documentary series about it. I want them to just do it and then show us the fruits of their labor.
Yeah, I don't need a montage cinematic recap. I just want the results. And we don't have to fight Thunder Lips in between. See, I've seen the movie. Okay. All right. Money, do you have any thoughts before we move on here to a mailbag?
Maybe it's reactionary because the last 2 weeks have felt so bad, but I think with recency of when Joey was hired, general direction of the program, back-to-back bowl games, beating Texas OU, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say these next 3 games are probably the most important stretch of games Joey has played at Tech or coached at Tech. Because now you're clearly on skates right now. I think anybody that's watched the last 2 weeks can see that Joey's visibly and audibly frustrated. He knows there's a lot to improve. But now you're staring down the barrel at a UNT team who's, 13.5-point dogs, but man, they can put points up when they want to. You've got Arizona State after that, who looks really, really good so far. And then a Cincinnati team that has the defensive chops to hang with pretty much anybody as long as they stay within themselves. So long gone are the blissful optimism of thinking we're heading into Arizona 5-0 and, that's a ranked matchup. I think these next 3 games are all games that I think you could look at on paper and say, if we're the kind of program that we think we are and that we want to be, we can take care of business in these next 3 games. They're all at home. They're all winnable games, some harder than others. But man, it feels like if you let 1 or 2 of these get away from you, it's going to be pretty significant. I think you're going to have to figure out who you are pretty quickly, or else some of these games that are, coin flips on paper, they're going to start going the other way. And instead of being 5-0 heading into Arizona, you could easily be, 2-3, 3-2. Like, that's not where you want to be as a program. And so I think these next handful of games before you even, get into the teeth of your conference schedule are pretty pivotal, in my opinion.
All right, I've been informed they did not finish the movie in Philadelphia, but in California. But point remains. All right, a couple of comments here. They're going to bring out a huge slab of beef onto the sideline. A couple I'm not going to read. That's not what I said. 2025 slogan, slap the beef. Matt Rule beat the dog out of Dion yesterday. It's true. It's very true. All right, let's go to the Matador Transit mailbag. Going to read the Washington State related questions. We'll get through them pretty quickly if I can find them all. The rest of these will be answered on Patreon, patreon.com/gamblingauchos. You can also ask the questions in the Discord. You'll get that link when you sign up for the Patreon. I would recommend joining the Patreon outside of a game day.
I was going to say,
a little bit.
Hilarious to me that a few people joined like on Saturday night. Like, hey, how do I get into the Discord? It's like, I mean, you can join if you want, but it's kind of a mess right now.
Yeah, I had a guy that joined earlier this week text me. He's like, wow, the game day thread is pretty off the rails in the first 2 minutes. So, yeah. And we'll delete that after the game and move on and make a new game day thread. Okay. Let's see. Let me get, this is great radio. Let me scroll a little bit. Oh, great. I'm ready for this Ollie Gordon question on Wednesday. We just talked about it a little bit, but is Joey on fraud alert? I don't believe so. Well, maybe alert. I don't know, maybe. I think there's semantics there for me.
My biggest trump card with the whole Joey thing is in the 12 years before he was hired, his 3 predecessors combined to go 0 for 12 in securing a winning conference record, and he's 2 for 2. And that, to me, buys him enough credibility to go 3-9 this year, make some coordinator and position group or position coach switches, and move forward. And if losing what was always a toss-up game in Pullman was a fireable offense, and he should have just been fired at the end of last year, like that's a small enough margin that you do it then. And of course, it would have been ridiculous to fire him at the end of last year. I get it was a terrible game. I haven't defended anything that happened during the game, but let's zoom out a little bit. So no, I'm not out on Joey.
Is this the week the job approval polls make a comeback? Man. What do you think Joey's approval poll would be right now?
2080?
20 approval?
Yeah.
No, I think it'd be 55. I think there's enough people that would still vote yes. The vocal majority, certainly on Saturday, would have you lean 2080, though. But after doing them for several years, I think he would get. Now, Kitley's would be low. Kitley's would be very low. DeRuiter, I think, would also be low because it's after a loss, and that's just what happens. But he might be the highest of the 3.
I think so too.
So maybe like
should be
55-60 for DeRuiter, maybe 45-55 for Joey, and then I don't even want to guess on Kitley. Should Washington State replace Texas Tech in the Big 12? No.
Hey, I used to be in favor of Wazoo and Oregon State because of that 4th window. Maybe doing it once a year is fun, but when you lose, especially in the fashion we did, and you're like contemplating everything at 3 a.m., that is not fun. And it's also not fun to like wake up at 7 with kids the next morning. So I think I'm out on Pac-12 After Dark. Maybe like once every few years just to experience it. But especially if you're going to lose those games, not fun.
Yeah, I could not sleep last night. I wrote an article after my post-game show, which was even an hour after the game ended. So I got off air at 2:30. And I couldn't sleep, so I wrote an article. It was like 3:30. And I was like, I can't sleep. I'll write one more. So I wrote a Houston Texans season preview for no reason, really. And then it was like 4:15. I was like, all right, let's go home. Is 3-9 the ceiling for Texas Tech football in 2024?
I hope not.
No, I don't think so. I think, all right, so you have one win. You're 12-point favorites against North Texas, which we'll talk about on Wednesday, but I don't think you'll be 12-point favorites on Wednesday. Cincinnati blew it against Pitt this weekend. Arizona won a game against Northern Arizona by 12, I think. Arizona State looks maybe the best of the next 4 weeks. I don't know. Arizona probably still the best. They just had a rough game.
Baylor was dreadful until Cam Rising got hurt.
Baylor was awful till Cam Rising got hurt.
They remained dreadful on offense, but they were able to stop Zach Wilson's brother.
I think at one point it was DeQuan Finn was 4 of 12 for like 42 yards, maybe. Then he completed several in a row and beefed it up a little bit. But yeah, Baylor is not good. You play them at home. I mean, I think the ceiling is still 7-5, 8-4. I mean, it's going to take a massive turnaround. I will say this: if you play like you played against Washington State the rest of the year, the ceiling is absolutely 3-9 and probably not that high. If you play like you did against ACU, you're probably still going to a bowl game because of some shootouts. But yeah, it's not great. Is it time to give G.J. Kinney a call and make him say no? Make him
No.
say no to what? Head coach? No, it's not time. It's not time. But I don't really want to see him at Baylor either. Kyle, you've said your piece there. You don't want to answer that one?
No, I don't think you're head coach shopping anytime soon.
Let's see. This is very reactionary stuff here. Does Joey Maguire make it to the end of the year? I'm going to just blow through some of these because I think we'll all have the same answer. Does Joey Maguire make it to the end of the year? Yes. And the end of next year, probably. Does Texas Tech football have a culture issue as deep as Colorado? No, not even close. Colorado is busted. Did you hear Shadur's comments after the game?
Yes, I heard them.
And then obviously the comments from Nebraska fans to Shadur during the end of the game as he was leaving 2 minutes before the game ended.
Am I bad for enjoying that?
No.
5 years ago, I would have thought that's so over the line.
Yeah.
But with NIL and him and his dad borderline begging and demanding for attention, I have no sympathy if fans want to like, oh, he's 20 years old. Okay, well, he makes millions of dollars. He has clowned on former teammates. This is big boy stuff now. And if they're allowed to profit off of their name, image, and likeness, it's also allowed to be scrutinized in the public space.
Yeah, well, him specifically. Just his comments at Big 12 Media Days, his comments elsewhere, his rap career. I think Nebraska dancing to his rap song
That was so good.
in the locker room was awesome. I think if Cam Rising was walking around a couple Big 12 stadiums, he would get a little juice because of his preseason talk. But like, if we were in Jones Stadium and I don't know, Noah Fafita was walking through 2 minutes to go in the game and people were giving him crap, I'd be like, all right, let's chill out here, people. I think he's a good kid, and I hadn't heard him say anything negative. I think he wouldn't deserve it, but I think Shadur has put himself out there in a way that deserves some combat.
Yeah, it's all proportionate to exactly that, like how much they're willing to egg people on. But I feel like there was a shield around college athletes for a long time until NIL.
Yeah.
But now they're literally professionals who, allegedly are supposed to go to class. So I'm fine with that kind of scrutiny, especially if you're somebody like Shadur Sanders.
Were we sold a lemon car? No, I think you bought a car and then put some bad tires on it.
2 best seasons in the last decade and a half.
Yeah. I think we're moving on from that too quickly. I mean, you hire a coach to win football games, but you also hire a coach to win conference football games. Number one, first and foremost, and he's done that. Will the Gauchos start a fire Joey campaign like they did for Wells? No, and we didn't start a fire Matt Wells campaign. We just said it on one episode. And he was fired the next day. If he hadn't been fired, maybe we start a campaign. The campaign was to hire Joey, and that also happened. Not because we said so, but there was just outside momentum for it. Is a 1-1 Texas Tech setup as bad as 0-2 Texas Tech? No.
I think we're going to have to go to the analytics on that one.
Mathematically, I would say no. He clarifies that's are you in a worse spot this year in 24 than you were in 23? No. I thought you had a tougher schedule last year and still pulled it out. But I think you've looked worse through 2 games this year than you did last year. If that makes sense. Do we win another game? And if so, which game? I think you beat North Texas. We'll start there. We're focused on North Texas. Kyle, you're giving me a little bit of a look here.
I'm just laughing. Like, I wonder what these people are like in their day-to-day lives. Like, I don't know if they get like a flat tire or something. They're like, will I ever be able to drive anywhere ever again? It's like, yes, like you can get this fixed in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I get it. Like it's
No, we're junking this car. We're buying a new one.
just impounded and
Yeah.
and I don't know. Like I know college football is emotional, and I get pissed off too. You can just follow along in the game day thread. But I don't know. Maybe I reset quicker than most, but I feel like a few hours later I'm able to zoom out and be like, okay, we absolutely crapped our pants tonight. There's nothing good to say about this game. But like also 2 weeks from now, if we win the next 2, I'm not gonna say like it's all over with. It's like people will reference how bad this game was for a while, but it's just funny. That it's like, well, we win again. Is 3-9 the ceiling? Are we calling GJ Kinney? It's like, no, you just had a really bad football game, and like none of that other stuff is gonna come into play till like late November at the earliest, and it has to be like basically absolute worst case scenario for that to happen.
This from Crying Ryan on Twitter. I normally don't ask all of the Twitter questions during the mailbag episode, but I just did you just join? Crying Ryan, are you biased towards Maguire since you were so enthusiastic to hire him? And if not, why do you refuse to say he needs to fire Kitley? Hey, we explained this earlier, or at least I did in my own words. I don't like to fire coaches on podcasts. I'm just a podcast host. I don't hold that kind of power. But I talked for 5 minutes about how terrible the offense was and has been for 3 years, how it's inefficient and the tempo sucks. So I don't know. Maybe go back and listen to the whole episode and then try again.
I met Crying Ryan at the ACU game.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Was he crying?
No. We all might have if we lost that game. Yeah, I mean, if it's not clear, I'm completely out on the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Like bar none. And I would flip the question around. I'm not biased toward Joey because we led a, effort to try to get him hired. I wanted him hired because I'm biased toward him and I thought he was the right guy. So I think the order on that is flipped.
Yeah. I mean, if there was a new offensive coordinator, if Cochran took over, all right, let's see what happens. I wouldn't be opposed to that either, but I don't love mid-season coordinator firings because then you're, down a coach the whole year. So I don't want to fire him today. But if it doesn't improve, yeah, I certainly would love to see a new offense next year. I don't think I've piddle-paddled on that very much.
I think it's frustrating too, just to think how good this offense would be in like a spread system, or even like a little bit more pro style. And if you just really tried to focus on creating space for these receivers instead of throwing it to them behind the line of scrimmage and saying, "Hey, good luck. Have fun with Trey McRae in front of you."
You know what? Just for you, crying Ryan. I don't know if you're in the. We have several Ryans in the Discord. I don't know if you're one of them. I will give a list of offenses I like more than Kitley's on Wednesday's episode. How about that? I'll take it further. I'll give a list of offenses I like with hireable offensive coordinators. So I won't give you like, Neil Brown, or which I don't really like his offense either. Or the Washington Commanders
Kansas State?
or Kansas State, no. Or A&M, or a lot of those places. But I will give you some offenses I enjoy. Should we let Cam Brown start and let Josh Cochran call a Colin Klein style Kansas State offense with tons of heavy sets of quarterback? I did not read this before I just said what I said. But should we let Cam Brown start and let Josh Cochran call a Colin Klein style Kansas State offense with tons of heavy sets and quarterback run game?
Yes. You telling me at the bye, if we're 2-3 or 2-4 or something, that we couldn't use that to install something totally different and be very slow, methodical, big, powerful, like 2 tight ends plus Taj plus Cam Brown, and out wide Josh Kelly and CD, or throw it when you have to or whatever. I'm at least curious enough to see what that looks like. I'd rather roll the dice on seeing what that looks like than throw it 62 times and 28 of them are sideline passes.
I would much rather see that than 90 plays of tempo. I would rather see that, yes. Was Caleb Rogers on the freaks list for his ability to kill drives? Did we bring in an NFL tight end to run the Wildcat or have 2 receptions for 6 yards? You guys ask really good questions with no answers. Is there a person on the staff who can call a complimentary offense?
Josh Cochran.
There's a Bart Rager question I'm going to save for Wednesday. I'm going to save a few more of these for Wednesday as well. Lots of reply back here. Lots of Joey Maguire questions. I think we've answered those. Rob, based on the reactions from your post-game show, what credibility does this staff still have? It's very low at this point. I think a lot of people are way out right now. And Kyle said earlier that 3-9 at the end of the year, you'd just be making some staff changes. I don't know. I do know that the athletic department is not as fickle as a fan base. You stuck with Cliff Kingsbury for 3 extra seasons. Of course, he was the favorite son that came home. Probably 2 extra seasons, not 3. But I don't think Joey Maguire has a lot of credibility to just do what he wants to do right now. I think he needs to make some changes. And those changes we've outlined today include less tempo and more discipline and a more efficient offense, and not turning the ball over on downs in terrible positions after big plays from the opposing offense. You guys are really funny, but I'm not going to read some of these. What's the best thing that Joey has done since coming to Texas Tech?
Hire the best defensive coordinator we've had in 15 years, back-to-back winning conference records, and talent accumulation via recruiting.
Are we out on Morton already?
Joey also, I think, had the first ranked win at the Jones since 2019, and the first.
And Oklahoma, yeah.
Yep, and the first ranked win on the road last year against number 16 Kansas since 2018.
Frauds. What team are the Picadors collectively adopting this season so we don't have to watch any more Texas Tech football? Do you guys have submissions for this team? Because I do.
Nebraska's kind of fun.
Nebraska, baby. Lil Cuzzo. Joe Maguire's mentor, Matt Rule. We could still do 60 minutes of us and the brand. We could still be the hardest, toughest working team in the country. We can do all that still. But root for Nebraska instead of Texas Tech. I'll probably do both. But last year, I picked Nebraska to win the Big Ten. I was just a year early. I should have doubled down this year. I was not brave enough to, but I'm back in. I'm jumping on the bandwagon. I would certainly go outside the Big 12, though. I don't want to root for anybody else in the Big 12.
Boise State.
No, I can't.
Electric running back.
I cannot watch that blue turf money. I can't do it.
You know, they were my former dynasty. You know, I have a good place in my heart for them. Now they've just got an electric running game.
Kyle, what about UNLV?
Yeah, love their offensive coordinator. Also, my phone's about to die.
Okay, we will do the rest of this on Wednesday. I think there's a lot of similar questions, so we'll do that Wednesday night. On patreon.com/gamblinggauchos. It's always available to you. Join up. You can listen to these Sundays episodes on demand on the Republic of Football feed. Which reminds me, if you give me 1 second, Kyle, will you give your final thoughts quickly?
What is there to say that hasn't been said? I guess my final thought is the penalties, which we have referenced. Obviously, they're bad. But to put it in perspective, if you missed this on Saturday night or Sunday morning, whenever this tweet went out, right now you have 21 penalties for, I think, 161 yards through 8 quarters of football against what's supposed to be 2 of the worst teams you play all year. You average that out, that's 10.5 penalties per game for 80.5 yards per game. Last year, those per game totals would have ranked 133rd and 132nd, respectively, out of 133 teams in the FBS. So you are quite literally on pace to be the most penalized team in the country, which I think is one of the most direct reflections of how disciplined or undisciplined you are. Like, yes, they're drive killers. Yes, they're momentum stoppers. But I also think they're just symptoms of being a bad football team. Like, there's a very high correlation, seemingly from looking at it. Like, the fewest penalties per game, it's the Air Force Academy. The most penalties per game, probably some coach who got fired. Now, there's exceptions. I think the U in the 80s in the Cotton Bowl against Texas had like 24 penalties for 500 yards, and they won anyway. They were loaded with Hall of Fame talent. You're not. So that's the big one. Like, if there's, we can gripe about X's and O's and all this crap and like, oh, use Micah Hudson more, throw over the middle, whatever. I just want to play a game with like 4 penalties, something normal. And that alone, the rest of it can be whatever. Like, that alone to me would be a huge step in the right direction. Thank you for that.
Somebody sent me that. The AI slapping the beef. Here's another one on the sideline. All right. This game this weekend against North Texas is in Lubbock. If you're from out of town and heading to the game, join us in the beautiful city of Lubbock. Visit Lubbock is a proud partner of Dave Campbell's Texas Football and the Gambling Gauchos podcast. You can check out the game preview for this game later in the week on TexasFootball.com. Not only will you see our game insights, but Visit Lubbock will have put together their guide for all things to do, can't miss experiences, and where to stay if you're traveling to Lubbock for the game. Thank you again. Visit Lubbock to learn more at visitlubbock.org. All three of us have enjoyed our times in Lubbock, different eras and times. I've been here for 30 years plus. Kyle, school here, stayed, started a family here, money, school here, then left, but enjoyed his time here. Would come back, I'm sure,
In a heartbeat.
as much as possible. Certainly comes back for games every once in a while, but his career took him elsewhere. But the Gauchos love Lubbock. We defend Lubbock vehemently online against domestic and international. I don't know. We just love Lubbock. So visit Lubbock at visitlubbock.com to find out where to stay, and visit TexasFootball.com later in the week for our game preview. By the way, the Gambling Gauchos wrote a game preview and posted it to Texas Football for the Washington State game. Fans called us frauds. We picked Washington State collectively. Fans called us frauds. Fans said we hated Texas Tech. I put them as 0-1 as a joke at the start of the article. Nobody got it. A little bit of a big brain thing by me. But, you know, where Kyle was right and where Kyle was wrong. Texas Tech lost the game this weekend. It was me, but all right. My final thoughts are this episode has been a bit of a chore, but cathartic. Love talking through this stuff. Love hearing about all the times that Kyle has been right on things. Kyle will continue to be right on things.
Hey, I only did it when Kyle was right, when it was also paired with a when Kyle was wrong.
Sure.
Playing it right down the middle.
I'm saying I enjoy listening to you talk about how good you are.
Like when I won the picks again this week.
You tied with money. You both
tied for first.
Technically, we all.
No, not technically.
Picked the same amount of games correctly. We all went 6-4.
This is the most millennial bullcrap I've ever heard in my life.
We all picked 6 games correctly.
Winners win.
Also on Wednesday in the patreon.com/gambling gauchos episode, I will do my punishment for the picks and sing a song about North Texas coming to town in the style of the Colts fan. So join for that as well. Money, your final thoughts, and we'll get out of here.
Well, fellas, this week's just another opportunity to go 1-0. So let's take care of business against the Mean Green, and let's get in the victory column. Let's take 3. Let's put up a 50-burger. Let's be the toughest, hardest working, most competitive team in the country.
I hated that.
Let's go! All right, love y'all.
Love y'all.